Hi, and welcome to Straight Shot Radio. My name is Johnny Slick, and I'm the owner and head coach at Straight Shot Training. A little bit over a month ago, I posted a tweet that said, a food is quote-unquote bad for you if it's A, poisonous, B, spoiled, or C, you're allergic to it. For every other food, there may be better or worse choices for diet adherence and nutrient density, but nothing else makes it bad. Food doesn't have morality. So I posted that tweet on my Twitter, which is straightshot_MD on Twitter, and then I reposted it on Facebook and also did a screenshot of it and posted it on Instagram. And it was one of the most shared posts that I've ever put up, and I didn't get any hate mail on it, which I don't typically do because I'm not saying inflammatory things. I feel like I'm kind of trying to embrace a little bit of everybody's backgrounds and give some clarity when it comes to how we can kind of learn from each other and find the diet and workout programs that work best for each of us as individuals, because what works for me might not work for you, and what works for you is not going to work for everybody else. So I typically don't end up getting in arguments about stuff in this circle that we have here. So if you're listening to this, you might also follow me on Facebook or Instagram. I typically don't get into arguments with people in those groups. However, I'm part of another Facebook group where when I posted this, about half of the people loved it and were resharing it, and the other half wanted to hang me. It was crazy the kinds of things that people were saying in the comment sections. And the people who loved it were attacking the people who hated it. And it was just this firestorm of people attacking each other in the comments section, which is something, for those of you who know me, that is not what I'm about. So I responded to a couple of the comments. I didn't respond to the ones that were like, oh, so you think drinking soda is okay? You must also think that doing black tar heroin occasionally is okay as long as it's in moderation. That's not even something that I can engage in, because it has gotten to the point of ridiculousness when it comes to moderation in some circles, where people think just because you say, you know what, high fructose corn syrup is not going to kill you. Sugar is not going to give you diabetes. Eating too much of it will, in combination with other things like how many total calories you're eating and what your genetics are like, your family history of diabetes. Do you work out or not? Do you have a sedentary job? There's so many other things that go into it other than just sugar. At the same time, when I say moderation, I don't mean, hey, you can drink a soda every day. Just replace those calories that you would be getting from maybe a banana or a sweet potato, and just replace that with a soda, and that's fine because the carbs equal out. That's not what I'm saying. You're missing out on vitamins. You're missing out on slower burning carbohydrates. They're going to give you a sustained source of energy that won't spike your blood sugar so quickly. You're missing out on minerals that are in both of those vitamins. You're missing out on a little bit of protein that's coming from the sweet potatoes. It's not something where I'm saying to replace your carbohydrates with soda or replace your avocado with some fried food because the fat macros equal out. That's different. That's going a little too far when it comes to moderation. When I posted that, I thought in the group that I was in that it would be helpful, excuse me, because a lot of the people in the group struggle with, there's so many things out here I don't know what's real. Carbs are bad. Carbs are good. Meat's bad. Meat's good. Red meat's bad. Red meat's good. Coffee's bad. Coffee's good. Eggs are bad. Eggs are good. And it's like every year there's more and more stuff that comes out that's opposite of the year before. And then over the course of time, if you were to like plot all of these on a graph, you would realize that it's all about how much you're eating or drinking. That moderation is always going to win on the longest time curve. That the people who are practicing moderation over the lifetime are going to be the ones who are overall the healthiest and live the longest and highest quality of lives. There are definitely things that you can do along the way that could, by eliminating them, may improve your health depending on your personal history or your genetics or your family's history of diseases. Sure, there's some things that probably cutting out would not be a bad thing. There are certain things that involve, like with alcohol, where that's a whole other thing where we could get into possible addictions and things like that, you know what, maybe having alcohol in moderation won't work for you, but it might work for somebody else. So when I talk about moderation, I don't feel like it should be controversial. Now, I was asked a while back about, well, how do we quantify moderation? Because moderation to me might be a soda every day, whereas moderation to you might be a soda a month, and somebody else it might be, a soda every couple of months. And that's a really good question. I definitely want to get into that another time about quantifying moderation. I don't even want to get into the science of moderation too much today, which I already have a little bit, but I wanted to get into some remarks that I had when I posted another thing about moderation on my personal Facebook and personal Instagram, where I asked people for some feedback on why moderation is controversial. Why should it be controversial for me to say, find what works for you? What works for you is not going to work for somebody else. And what works for them might not work for you. So you know what? Go ahead and try a little bit of everything and see what things your body likes and what things your body doesn't like. And don't rely on some infographic you saw on Twitter or on Instagram or some article that your aunt reposted on Facebook that says that if you eat bananas, you're going to get diabetes. Like you can't just go off of the crap storm of misinformation on the internet, because that's exactly what it is. It's just a nonstop feed of whatever people want to post, and there's no science to back a lot of this stuff. Or there might be one study, and then there's a million other studies that refute that evidence. So I asked people I posted a video from a movie, The Princess and the Frog, where this alligator really wants to play jazz, and so he is telling these frogs about the one time that he tried to play jazz on a riverboat and it didn't end well. What happened was there's a band playing on the boat and some people dancing to it, and then he jumps up and he starts playing jazz, and then they all stop playing and look at him, and he stares at them, and then next scene is he's jumping off a boat and they're shooting at him. So I made a meme out of this by saying that I put over top of the band playing music that these were keto zealots, and the people listening to the music were vegan purists, and then me jumping up, I was the alligator, and I was suggesting simple moderation. When I first saw this scene, that's the first thing that popped in my head, because I saw this scene around the time that I had posted that tweet in that group about moderation, and I got just super attacked immediately. And I didn't take it personally because I know that a lot of people are misinformed, but what upset me more was that other people are following the alarmist culture of dichotomous thinking when it comes to food, of this is good, this is bad, and whoever they're listening to at that point has a lot of pull on how they think, and that's kind of scary, that your entire diet can be shifted by an article on Facebook or by one thing that somebody reposted. So I posted that meme, and I asked people, why do you think moderation is so polarizing? And I got some really good feedback on Instagram. Let's see, find Denise's quote here. There we go. Denise said, because it destroys the diet industry propaganda of good or bad foods. Food is simply food. It provides sustenance and can be delicious. Trendy diets seem to emphasize restriction and pigeonhole you into eating things that you may in fact dislike otherwise, which is going to give a negative impression and make it less likely to maintain when you can barely tolerate what you're making yourself eat. That's a really good quote. If you all have listened to this podcast for a while, I had an interview with Denise a long time ago. Excuse me. This was one of the early podcasts, and Denise has lost 200 pounds, and she has done it by being very, very moderate in her dieting, and she works with a coach, and she has found what works for her. But what didn't work for her was completely eliminating things. So she had to come to this this realization that dieting is not going to work for her. It needs to be a lifestyle change. And you can go back and listen to that episode if you'd like to hear more about it. I don't want to exactly explain it. I would rather her say it in her words. If you go back and listen to that podcast where she talks about making that lifestyle change and how gradual it has to be. And that involved moderation. So that was Denise's quote on Instagram. On Facebook, Chloe said, "I think, and this is from my personal experiences with dieting, that practicing moderation takes time." Again, there's the key here. This is with Denise and with Chloe, dieting through moderation, the way you should, where it actually involves a lifestyle change, will take time. She's also said diets like keto give you results faster. People want to lose the weight in a few weeks, not months. That was my attitude. I've been trying to practice moderation recently because I've finally accepted that those diets don't work for me. Same problem that Denise had. Side question, do you have any thoughts on keto and anxiety? I've had big spikes in my anxiety when I did keto. For answer that side question really quick, for Chloe, actually, the only thing that I've really seen on keto and anxiety was, of course, all the studies being done on keto, or everyone thinks it can cure everything right now. So it's really hard to find anything on keto other than what keto can do and not what keto can't do, especially with the way that companies are making so much money off of keto products that they're pumping all of this money into ads on Google. So if you try to research anything on keto, all you're going to get is pro-keto websites running ads on Google. So the reason why you could have spikes in your anxiety while on keto would be the same reason that a vegan could have spikes in their anxiety when trying to find a food that does not have animal products in it, or wondering if a food might have an animal product in it. With keto, when you're hungry and you're trying to find something to eat and it can't have a carbohydrate in it, that can get tricky, and that can definitely spike your anxiety. I remember back in college when I really struggled with my eating because I wanted to only eat healthy stuff. I was studying clinical nutrition, I was studying fitness nutrition, and I did think that there were good and bad foods. And it was stressful for me to go out and get ice cream with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and how upset that made her. That this was like she even told me, she's like, this is like an eating disorder. Like, you can't relax enough to eat an ice cream when we go out. And I would try to figure out how to make it work into my calories, or eat less carbohydrates the next day, or work out harder the next day. I was 18, 19 then, and I was even hearing things in my clinical nutrition class about practicing moderation, but I was also reading Men's Health magazine, and Facebook was a thing back then, but there wasn't it wasn't the same as it is now. If you all remember Facebook, 11 years ago. I was reading magazines, I was reading diet books, I was getting a little bit into the early days of CrossFit then, so I was thinking that carbohydrates and sugar were bad, and it was affecting my relationships with other people because my diet was causing me anxiety. And that is, if any diet is causing you anxiety, that is not a sustainable diet. It's not something that you're going to be able to do long term, and it's not the healthiest thing for you. So, Chloe, that might be some of the anxieties, but also carbs do trigger some of the neurotransmitters in your brain. They're responsible for like dopamine and serotonin. So that's why some people crave sugar all the time, because they're really craving just those spikes in dopamine and serotonin, which is why, too many carbohydrates can be bad for you and can become reliant on it. But I think probably the anxiety may have come more from just the overall feeling most people get when they're on keto, and the difficulty finding foods that fit into that. I'm not entirely sure, but that's something I definitely want to look into. Amy also said on Facebook, it is seriously so hard to self-control and discipline, or practice self-control and discipline, but on the same level, not self-hate if you mess up. That's very, and the thing is, wow, that's crazy to see the word self-hate. If you hate yourself because you drank a Coke, or you feel like you hate yourself because you eat ice cream, this goes beyond diet. This is no longer in my territory as a coach. This is something that that you really need to think about when it comes to your diet. There should really be nothing that you eat or drink that should cause self-loathing. That's not even. I really don't even think that's a product of just something internal. That's external. That's being fed to you, that is making you believe that you are less because you succumb to temptation. So because we are hearing all the time that soda will kill you, diet soda will kill you, carbs are bad, eggs are going to raise your cholesterol, all of this stuff that we hear all the time is subconsciously changing our outlook on ourselves. Anytime we eat a food that doesn't fall into whatever group we're a part of, whatever they say is good or bad, that's kind of crazy. I totally get what she's saying. It's I know that there's so many people out there who have issues with this, and why I am so big on moderation. After that, she says it's on the same level, not to self-hate even if you mess up. Then after that, she says, eat those whole foods and grab a donut every now and then. Keep calm and grub on. That's more like it there, Amy. That's exactly staying calm and realizing that food is just food. It's carbohydrates, fat, and protein. There's different mixtures of them in every food that we eat. It affects your blood sugar in slightly different ways, but ultimately all carbohydrates end up as glucose. All fats will end up as triglycerides. All proteins end up being chopped up into amino acids. Your body does different things with all three of those, and the amounts of those that you eat over the course of the day, or the ratios of those, will have some effect on the way you feel, and the way you lose or gain muscle mass, and the way you lose or gain body fat. Most important thing is how many total calories you're taking in. That's going to determine whether or not you lose weight, and how you create that caloric balance, either to maintain, to lose, or to gain weight, is going to be totally up to you and exactly how you do that. And I don't think that that's something that we should be fighting so much about. So I don't know the answer of why it needs to be so controversial. I don't think it needs to be controversial when anything that I've said today. I don't know why it needs to be so inflammatory for me to say, find what works for you, and don't let your diet cause you to self-loathe or cause you to have anxiety, or for you to project that onto anybody else. You shouldn't make anybody feel bad about what they're eating. And I apologize if I've ever done this to people, because I know back in the day I probably did. Because I was buying into whatever I was reading or whatever I was looking at. So I would continue to tell you to be very skeptical about the things that you're reading online, and look into this stuff. And when it comes to your diet, find something that works for you, and understand that might not be the thing that works for somebody else, and what works for somebody else might work for them, and that's totally fine. I have keto friends. I have vegan friends. And I can talk to them about their diets. And if they ask me for some advice or things that they could eat, or ways they could get protein, or ways that they could get enough protein and fat without getting carbs if they're keto, excuse me, I love to help. And I have friends who believe different things than me, even outside of diet and nutrition, and I get along with them. This is just being people. And I feel like when we get into nutrition, we let food and our belief in how we look at food keep us from being civil. And I really don't think that that's something we need to do. So thank you all so much for listening. If you have any thoughts on this, please shoot me a message. My email is Johnny, Jonny, at straightshottraining.com. You can also shoot me a message on Instagram at straightshottraining is the handle over there. And Facebook, it's Straight Shot Training. Twitter, it's at straightshottraining_MD. Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you can go off now and enjoy some delicious food, whatever it is that you would like to eat today. And I will talk to you all later.